Hi everyone, welcome to OLM community meeting. Today is January 21st, 2025. I'm going to share my screen first so that you can all see our agenda. So the first thing is we have RFC, which is still undergoing review about permission validation pre-flight check, and the LG consensus date is 22nd. So please take a look, and if you have any topics, please add it to the agenda, or we can discuss it later. There are two old action items. One was ensure we have Epic for everything. I am actually going through it. I started working on it. This is in progress. Because there's a lot of roadmap topics in the document, existing document. So we have to go one by one and make sure that there are epics available or not. So it's ongoing. We're working on this one. The next one is Joe and me to create a dashboard which will reflect the relative priority of the epics. So I have Joe and everybody else, right? I found out the reason why we are not able to prioritize epics here. So if you look at this, and there is sort by, whenever it's sort by labels, this is a problem. I don't know. I just changed it and I think it's changed back to again label somehow. I'm not sure. So when I make it to manual, it always works. So like if you do no sorting here, and then you can move around and it works perfectly fine. But if you sort by labels, then it would basically apply some logic, which it has, right? So whenever it's manual, you can actually sort it whatever way you can. Um,
Well, I think all you have to do to get it to stick is to click the save button over on the far right.
oh, that's maybe the reason it's not. Oh, Maxo, thank you. So I was like, I changed it. Why it is not reflecting? Okay, so if I go now, yeah, manual. Okay, so now we should be able to sort it. I did little bit of sorting. Like I pulled all these wandered ones to the top, and also I cross-checked that all of the wandered one label epics actually has wandered X. So now we can actually delete the wandered one label. We don't need it anymore because we're just gonna follow wandered X release train. So this is, and maybe today we can, during the meeting, we can go through this and sort it a little bit. Joe, does that sound okay to you?
Sounds good to
Like,
me.
yeah, the roadmap check-in, we can do a little bit of sorting there and making sure the board it looks at least a little bit aligned to what we're working on right now. So cool. So I'm going to close this off. I think probably this is fine. So the next topic is Joe and Anik query endpoint API RFC miss talking about what happens when the query is sent in without any parameters. Deciding to go with server sends back all metadata, any objection and suggestions. So Joe, Anik, do you want to add anything here? Do you want to start the discussion, kick off the discussion?
Uh, so that's basically it. I don't know, Joe, if you want to add. Essentially, while we were doing the implementation, we realized that, um, when you when you query endpoint, the RFC talks about what happens when you query, for example, query question mark OLM dot schema equals to package. So it gives you all the packages. And then if you do OLM dot schema equals to, package and name equals to foo. So it gives you that one particular OLM dot package schema for that particular package. However, we missed talking about what happens if you send in or if you query the endpoint without any parameters. We already have the all endpoint that you can query to get all of the metadata. So what happens if you send in or if you query the server with the query endpoint, but without any parameters? Do you get all of it, all of the metadata, which is behaving similarly to the all endpoint, or do we error out? So far, we've had a few discussions, and it sounds like erroring out is more unexpected. Um, and we are thinking about just going with you get all of the metadata if you query the query endpoint without any parameters. And also deprecating the all endpoint because there's sort of no point duplicating functionalities across endpoints. So I wanted to make sure that the community is aware of that and then see if there's any objections or suggestions. I'm also planning on retroactively updating the RFC to capture this decision. Just wanted to make sure that it's floated out there and see if there's any objection to that before I edit the RFC. Joe, I don't know if you want to add anything else.
I think that pretty much covered it. Thanks.
I'm trying to recall is that one of the challenge of the all endpoint was it has a lot of data which was not useful, probably not useful for the clients to go through all of them, right? Was that an issue in the
Right,
past?
right. Well, so it's not that it's not useful. It's that some clients will not want to only depend on all and then process all of the metadata every time. So we need a way to get them filtered results, which is why we are introducing the query endpoint. But some clients might say that, okay, no, just give me the all endpoint, all metadata every time, and I'm gonna do the processing because I don't need an optimized filtered list every time I query. I'm happy to just get all of it, um, and do the processing myself. But we do have the all endpoint for that, um, and it's part of our API. So we were thinking about what happens when the query endpoint gets queried without any parameters.
Yeah, one of the concern I have is uh, it's all is more explicit. Like when somebody says base API v1 hyphen all, it's like explicitly I'm needing like I want everything. But when you say without any parameter, that can be user error, right? So user might not know about the format or the or schema or whatever we have, right? The API, and then might mistakenly just send a query without any parameters, and then he or she would get or they would get a whole list, like everything. I just wonder if that is the right kind of user experience we're looking for.
I don't know that that really seems like a problem to me if it's documented, right? Like that might happen to someone who is experimenting with it and sees that it happens when they're doing a curl command. But then they see that it happens and it's like, okay, well, that's not what I wanted. I'll go either read the docs or maybe I know and I'll go and set a parameter. So I don't know if user error potential for user. Well, I should walk that back a little bit. We should be careful not to have too many foot guns. And I
Right.
think the question like is this a foot gun or would it be more unexpected if this didn't return? Right? Like I think if you look at the pattern, we have query where there's three parameters, all of them are optional. You can pass one, well, you can pass any of them or none. Well, again, you can pass any combination of the parameters is how it works. And if you don't pass a parameter, then we assume that you don't care about that particular parameter. So we'll select everything from that particular parameter. So if you said, give me everything with schemas OLM.channel without giving us the package or name parameters, we're going to give you every single OLM.channel. So to me, from an intuitive standpoint, if that's sort of the mental model you have for the query endpoint, then it makes total sense to say, well, if I don't give any parameters, that means I have no opinion on them and I'll get everything back. It's just following the general pattern of everything is optional.
So your opinion is, Joe, that this is not a foot gun. Second is slash all versus no parameters. I think no parameters is more intuitive for users to basically use rather than having a slash all, right?
I mean, I think that's probably debatable. At the end of the day, query with no parameters and all is going to be the same.
Right. The question is, I think, which is more intuitive or which is more,
I don't know if that's the question. I think the question is if you're thinking about just the perspective of the query endpoint on its own in isolation, would it be weird for us to break the general pattern of the parameters are optional individually by saying you have to give us at least one?
Right. I think what probably another way of paraphrasing of phrasing that is you would expect that if you say, hey, here's an endpoint, and if you query this, um, you get whatever metadata I have in my server. But if you want filtered, then you put in the query, you put in parameters, and then you can filter by those parameters. Is that probably is the norm, expected sort of behavior of an endpoint, as opposed to you can only use this endpoint using parameters, and if you don't give us any parameters, then we error out. That probably isn't the norm or expected behavior from endpoints. And I see Adam's hand is up, so I'm gonna let him go.
Yeah, I would say like any endpoint, if it allows filtering, throwing an error without a filter is unexpected just from any type of like Swagger or GraphQL or any implementation of filtering. It would be weird for a user to get an error back on an endpoint if they didn't provide a filter. Now, if they provided a filter that doesn't exist, an error would make sense.
Yeah, and I think we do talk about that. Like if someone sends in parameters where there is nothing that matches, I'm pretty sure on it we do say that that would be like a 400 something for not found, 404, I guess.
Yep, that's correct.
And when we talk to some of the folks that work on the OpenShift console, which is one of the one of the clients that's interested in this work, they also agreed that it would be weird to error without if parameters are missing. So the last thing that came up, which we actually didn't talk about with them, is well, if we're going to then implement all functionality within query, another potential thing we could do is we could say, well, we don't need another endpoint. We could just extend all to support query parameters, in which case then we could filter the all endpoint. And I think when we were talking about this, just on Jordan and I last week, the feeling was that that might be a little weird because all makes it sound like you're going to get all, and then it's weird that that would accept parameters. So we, at the time, sort of landed on, well, okay, let's call it query. Let's make query support everything that all does, and then that would mean that we could deprecate all. So I don't know if anybody has feelings on that possibility of just making all do all of the filtering as well.
That sounds kind of weird and confusing.
yeah.
Like if you look at just like, Swagger or GraphQL or whatever, like standard nomenclature is query, and then you apply filters on top of things to get them. So you either have like a find endpoint, and then you filter the find down to stuff, or you have a get endpoint, which just gives you one thing back.
Yep.
Right. So I think we should stick to that sort of nomenclature.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you get what you needed on it?
Yeah, Per has his hand up.
Oh yeah,
Can
sorry.
you hear me?
Yeah, we
Yeah.
can hear you, Ben.
Okay. Just a couple of thoughts. Do we envisage that we might return something other than metadata? Or are we only going to ever return this type of data? So,
We
and
very strongly want to avoid doing any adaptation of the underlying FBC
yep,
source
okay,
material.
all right. Um, so the motivation for that question was that, query is a sort of general term. So I don't know if we want to specify around, what we're returning, whatever it is, catalog metadata or some such. And the other thought I had was if filtering returns finds no results, um, maybe 404 is it could be misinterpreted as like, okay, is it that the endpoint is not there and it's not found, or is it that the query results,
Yeah.
like so maybe returning an empty result set is
Yeah,
less ambiguous.
we talked about this in the RFC, so I don't think we do a 404 actually. We do a 200, or at least
Okay.
that's what's proposed. I don't know if
Yeah.
that's switched.
Okay, cool. If it's
Not
already
done.
been discussed, then that's all good. So that was it. Thank you.
That is a good point, though, Per. The thought crossed my mind that, like going back to Adam's point about how you would sort of typically expect REST style URLs to work. You'd have something like API v1 catalog metadatas or API v1 FBCs or like something sort of that tells you the name of the object kind you're going to get back. And then you like that could sort of then be the all endpoint. Like you could just say API v1 catalog metadatas, and that gives you everything. But then you could also pass query parameters to do the filtering. So that's another potential option that doesn't seem unreasonable at all. But on the other hand, I also don't think that I just can't envision an argument where we would say, ah, yeah, let's return to the gRPC kind of days where we're gonna take the underlying source data, munge it somehow, and serve it. Like I think we're probably going to go more of the route of let's go all the way back to the source, and if the underlying data model is not working, let's go and change the data model.
Yep, like I think that makes a lot of sense. Um, so I'm just trying to think whether like having something more specific anyway makes sense just from a clarity perspective, even
Yeah.
if we have no intention of creating other resources or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm
But
I'm not
yeah,
opposed. I'm not opposed to changing it to be called catalog metadatas or FBCs, or if someone else has another idea for a name, because then I think that would make it more clear. Like query is kind of it's a little bit weird, I think, if you have query where you accept no parameters and it returns everything. If it were catalog metadatas and it accepted query parameters but none were given, it would make total sense for that to return
right.
everything.
And the catalog name is anyway before the API, right? On the URL.
Yes. So
Yeah, so
that's the other aspect of it, because we do have, like if you look at the whole URL, it's got the service name and then catalogs slash catalog name, so Opera Hub IO, whatever. And then
mhm,
you have the query endpoint. So you have,
right.
So we call these meta objects. What if we renamed query to just slash metas?
so I have, when I was looking at the code, metas is very confusing to me. Eh, I don't know if that itself is a, because metas is so vague. So if you've been tuned into FBC, and you understand, okay, this is, meta blobs, meta objects, whatever. So it makes sense. But then if you just trying to tie in things in the code, and I was looking at the meta variable, like 4 layers deep, I've already lost the meaning of meta. Um, So
Yeah,
I
so meta is sort of like thinking about Kubernetes objects. The declarative config meta is sort of the uh, general type that everything follows, sort of like the Kubernetes meta v1.object or runtime.object.
right. But I feel like, at least again, this is a personal opinion, so we probably don't have to, go into the rabbit hole because of this. But the word meta is so overused everywhere that trying to tie in the context with just that word at this point gets a little difficult. So
Yeah, I think looking at the full URL, then the fact that you're speaking to catalogs and you have a catalog name, then maybe query is not so loose as I first thought.
But I mean, it's not terrible,
Hmm.
but I do kind of like the name of the endpoint being the object type you get back. Because that's very standard and pretty recognizable. And I do understand your point, Anik, that meta is almost meaningless unless you know what meta is in the context of FBC. So I get the argument for not naming it metas, but I also don't have a better alternative. We could say metadatas, maybe that's okay. I don't know that I would love catalog metadatas because we already are in the context of catalogs. So that seems sort of repetitive and duplicative.
Hmm.
You could say blobs, but that's maybe just as meaningless as
Hmm.
metas. I don't know. We don't have to keep bike shedding on the
Yep.
name with the whole group, but I think this is a point that we should circle back on as part of this work on it.
yeah, sounds good. Okay, but at least I think I've gotten the thing that I wanted, which is we are okay with sending all when there's no parameters. And it sounds like the group is also on the same page about deprecating the all endpoint, and there's no objection to doing that.
Yep.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks, folks.
Cool. Um, so moving ahead with roadmap check-in. So we have there are two epics which are in implementing part, right? One is catalog D web interface performance improvement, just we talked about the related RFC here, and then the other one is combine catalog D and operator controller into monorepo. So that's ongoing. I think this is mostly done for the phase one. Um, so yeah, the phase one is mostly done. So we can choose to keep it as it is, or we can create a different epic for phase two and close this one. What do you guys think? Any suggestion?
I kind of think we could close it since we're to the point where we were able to build it and use it, and it's actually like a thing now. So that seems like a reasonable milestone to cut it and say, okay, now we want to, do phase two essentially, which is to make it nicer.
Right. Okay. So I'll do that offline. So I'll close this one and then move everything else to phase two. So sounds good to me.
But I would say that the phase two stuff, like we've already designed it, it should still be in implementing, and we should keep doing it. It's like one of the higher priority things.
But yeah, so we'll keep the phase two in the implementing part, and there's already been designed as part of the RFC.
But before we close, it has two items that we didn't, that is phase one. That is small ones, the update target and the update catalog de demo script. Because both targets are using the release, and we need to do a release to have the same link, or we need to change how we are doing that.
Yep. Or
I
so I think that kind of thing in catalog D, we just want to remove. right? Like
Yeah,
there should be no such thing as running a catalog D release. We're just
I
running
mean,
the operator controller release that has catalog D in it.
Yeah, but we need a new release first, right?
no,
For the
Camila,
thing, yeah, for the things that install from the operator controller release, yeah, we need a release for those things to work.
I am so I think we're talking about the same thing. So in the make file, in the operator control make file, we have a release, our latest release, which basically releases both operator controller and catalog D. Is that right, Camila?
Yes, but currently the latest release of the operator controller has a YAML, right? The installer, you install only operator controller if you will do the same.
Yeah.
Then the problem, so when we need to do a release or a release candidate from what we have now with the mono repo chains, then we should have the installer installing both projects. Then we can update this target.
Right. Can we? I think I'm okay with that plan. Basically, doing a release candidate and then do a release from the monorepo so that we can move forward. I think that's something I think Joe also mentioned in the past.
Yep.
I think that's
We
the
should
right thing
do
to
a
do.
release candidate just to make sure that all the machinery works.
So what I was thinking is like when we are close to the date, we can do a release candidate, test this out, and update these targets. What do you think, or should we do that now?
We
I
can
think
do
we
that
can do
now.
it now.
Yeah. Yeah.
That way, if it doesn't go right, we still have time. We can then do more release candidates until it works.
And for the second phase, do we have a mapped what we want to do exactly? Because I'm not sure if we have a clarity about everything, right? That are like abstract points that we want, but we don't know exactly.
Sorry, Camila, I didn't get it. Can you please repeat? Sorry.
Sure. Sorry. Really sorry. If you go in the app, we have the items for the second phase. So we know in our mind that at the end, the ultimate goal that you'd like to have would be like basically we no longer would you have like a catalog to maybe manifest, right? Or the stuff inside. Everything would be in the root, more or less. We would combine everything. We will combine the customizes. Maybe we don't know exactly how you do that. It has many ways to solve the same, many approaches that we can take. Do you want to do? I understood that Joe told you that the second phase is still a priority now, or do you want like postpone this work?
I don't think we should postpone because I think the current state of the repo is sort of, it's not bad, right? Like it all still works, but it's not really, it's sort of this intermediate state that we knew we wanted to get to be able to keep making progress in a mono repo. But I think looking at the stories that are in the Epic for the phase 2, it was consolidate, make file, consolidate, customize. I think we should have another one for consolidate GitHub workflows, and then the actual one where it's talking about consolidating code and doing deep duplication.
I
Those
think
all make sense to me as phase 2, and that seems like it covers all of the things that we would want to do.
when you say GitHub, you mean the integration tests, right? We do the same
all
tests.
the
Yeah,
all the tests, right? Like
yeah.
the first phase, we just basically copied all the catalog D GitHub actions and have those running separately. I think we would want to essentially get rid of all of those, but not get rid of the functionality they provide, right? Like the one that does tests should run whatever catalog D unit tests we have the one that does end-to-end test, we should probably just move our end-to-end test from catalog D into the main set of end-to-end tests, and then we just run the end-to-end test once. So that sort of thing, I think I would expect to happen as part of phase 2.
Okay, so the plan is we close this app and create like a mono repo phase 2 and edit these tasks.
Yep, and it does seem like there's probably a few things missing, so we can revisit and come back and make sure we should probably have another sync separate from this meeting to say, okay, here's the things that we think we want to do in phase 2.
Right.
Sure.
Cool. Sounds good. Camila, it seems like you are interested to create the epic for phase 2. Is that something you wanted to do, or
I can do. I can
Okay.
do. Yeah.
Great. Thank you. So I think anyway, we were not creating the epic until we, I mean, we can still create, but I think we are not closing the phase 1 epic until we do it. Like the two things which is still need to be fixed, right? One is we'll do a release, and then using the release, you will fix the demo script, and then it's done. Phase 1 is done, right?
Yes, for me sounds great.
Okay, awesome.
I think as soon as we see that the release candidate produces a release that is what we want, we can say it's done. We don't have to have a full release of it.
The only the challenge, Joe, is we have this demo. The next one is the demo script of catalog D, which probably need to reference the release, right?
But
Yeah, that's a good question. Like the fact that it wants latest, but in my mind, like when we close out a feature, we do it before we make a release. So if we convince ourselves that the current repo is set up in a way such that everything in there is going to work when we do the release, then we're done with it in my mind. So if we think that the demo script is going to do the right thing, I guess is the question, we actually need to rerun the demo script so that we can update the actual demo that's checked in. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, the demo script would. It's a gray area. It's not. I'm okay with like anything. If you want to do it later on phase 2, also that's fine.
I think we have only the installation, right? Probably.
Yeah, I'm okay. It's like Joe is saying, right? I mean, it's not a big deal. So we can do it in phase 2 as well. So do not have to
Well,
keep
I
it
guess
in.
I would say we should change that script now to point to the operator controller release. The current operator controller latest release is still pointing back to the catalog D release. So if we changed it right now, nothing would really change because we're still using the old catalog D release from the catalog D repo.
Right.
But as soon as we actually do the release, then in theory, it works the way we expect it to. And if it doesn't, okay, that's fine. Like we thought we did it. We'll open a bug, we'll fix it after the release, and that'll be that.
Yeah.
In my mind, let's just change that script to point to the operator controller release. Let's do the release candidate to say like, yep, that looks like it installed the right thing. And then we'll say we're done with this one. That makes sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. Cool. The next one is we are currently designing is permission validation pre-flight check. We have the RFC and brief everything here. And that's all. So we probably have not created, once the RFC is approved, I think we'll create the rest of the work cards, which is not created yet. So I think we'll go to that. So in no status column, I think let's in today's meeting at least try at least 4 or 5 epics which should be sorted as per priority, and then rest of the things we can do it later. So what's the epic which should be a top priority on the no status column? There is webhook. This one is, I think, something we know that this is something we need to add to OLM V1. There is performance and scale. And then there is help admins determine necessary permission for bundle recycling. Recycling, sorry.
So my 2 cents is that technically 919 is the highest priority, but it's blocked by 988, which is in progress. So we probably won't be able to work on that until we have a lot more progress done on 988. I would move support direct bundle installation down. Somewhere it's probably okay. The webhook one I would move up.
I think we had a epic about single namespace also, right?
I don't
All
know if
namespace.
we have that in GitHub or not. Oh, there it is. Yeah, there it is. The watch namespaces. So that one could move up too, probably.
Which one, Joe? Sorry, I missed it.
It's down a little bit. Right there, number 593. I think let's see. So if you now looking at the top of the list, and again, anybody else, obviously feel free to chime in, especially if you disagree. I kind of think the performance and scale one needs to be near the top. I know we're working on the catalog D web interface, and that Epic is about performance improvements. So it seems like we need to have some sort of way to quantify what we're doing, and we don't really have that. So in my mind, like the performance and scale stuff, we can't really do a whole lot with the catalog D web interface performance measurements without having some sort of underlying framework to help us do that. So in my mind, that one is fairly high. Maybe number one even.
So let's see. So this epic, we
started, we stopped, we said it's not super important for 1.x. Talking with other folks in the Kubernetes community, they were like, hey, have you guys done this? Because it's actually super important to start baselining this now so that you don't get worse as you go. So I agreed with that sentiment and felt like we should prioritize this sooner rather than later. Every feature we deliver where we don't have something along these lines, I think like is a recipe for pain. I also think that when we started this epic out, we didn't quite exactly know what we were trying to do. I don't know that we still know exactly what we're trying to do, but I think we have a better understanding, and we should probably like put this through a typical design process again, just to make sure.
right. So I think we should basically talk about in a separate meeting, like what's our goal or expectation from this epic, more like in a written down format, and then basically go for the design process.
Yep, I agree. I think your last comment there from end of October is pretty on point still.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, we probably went through this epic on that meeting. So cool. I don't know if Edmund would be interested in this, or because he was working on this. Otherwise, I can, try to set up a meeting on this and try to see at least new objective for this epic.
So I'd also be interested in this, but again, like I'm not.
Yeah.
It depends on other priorities and stuff, and whether I'll have cycles. So we'll have to see. But if it comes to just interest, I'm also interested in this.
Yeah, I'm open to working on it. It might be worthwhile having some clear objectives as far as what we're trying to do at the end of the day. I think that has been mentioned as well.
Yeah, I think that's where we didn't really have that the first time around. tried a few different things and nothing really seemed like it was exactly what we wanted. So yeah, I think the first step is like let's try to get some consensus on concrete outcomes we're expecting and then work backwards.
Cool.
Could we consider to automate these checks? Like as a developer, as a maintainer, I'd like to create a feature, or when we do a release, I check a report, or when I do a pull request, I know if something crazy too much or not.
Ideally, yes. Ideally, we would have two things. One is a way to define a new baseline for some new thing that's easy to add rather than like having to build a whole new framework for it every single time you want to do it. Two is once you have some amount of statistical data collected, then you've got something that can tell you and potentially fail a PR when you violate the rule or if you surpass the threshold of the baseline. So I think that will be part of what we talk about when we do this discussion about what we're going to do concretely. But I think if we don't do those things, then the value of this work would be low. Like we've got to make it so that it is automatic and easy.
Perfect. Thank you.
So the next topic is help admins determine necessary permissions, which is basically we have 980, 988, and then it basically follows 988. And, I think we'll wait till we're actually done with this 988, and then we'll come back to this. The next one is 1492. They support registered V1 bundles that include CSV, the spec webhook definitions. The namespace and the parameterization for registered V1 bundles actually needs information. It does not have enough information in this epic. So we have to use case, like we have added a comment here, we should figure out the use cases we want to solve with this epic. So that's kind of pending. I think that's good for now, or do you want to go through more epics?
We need to go through a lot more unless anyone has any epics in particular.
So okay, the next one, Joe, is 1424. I called you because this is actually probably assigned to you or something.
Yeah, so this one is we've got a kubectl operator plugin. It can do it has a nicer UX for CLI operations for OLM v0 than just kubectl apply stuff. But we haven't done anything with that for OLM v1. So this epic is basically about updating kubectl operator so that it uses OLM v1 APIs rather than OLM v0 APIs. I have a POC of this in a PR, but that's as far as I've gotten. It's actually not that difficult. A lot of the plumbing is already there. It's literally just sort of ripping out all of the complexity that was required to implement OLM v0's orchestration via operator groups and subscriptions and approvals of install plans and all that kind of stuff. With OLM v1, it's basically ripped that all out and put in kubectl apply, a cluster extension for a catalog. So I don't know that the implementation of this will be that hard. It's more of just knocking it out, I think.
Joe, the kubectl operator, is it already part of operator framework?
Yeah. Yep, it's already an operator framework, and it's also already in the official crew index. So we've got a foothold there. And I think if we want to, make OLM v1 more real for people, that would be one good place to do it.
Okay. The next one is add bundle release attribute.
This one is I don't know that we should do this in isolation. It's this one's more about a larger strategy around how we're going to change FBC. And there's a whole bunch of other stuff that's going to play into that too. There's the fact that our existing FBC data model puts like munges a bunch of stuff together that maybe isn't great. We have support for Helm on the horizon, and that might necessitate some changes in FBC. This particular one is about needing to essentially establish a distinction between the bundle packaging and the underlying software that's packaged. So if you think of Helm charts or RPM, both of them have this concept where like in RPM, there's a release field that says this is the third release of this software, where
Right.
the software is 1.0.0, and this is the third packaging of 1.0.0.
Build, basically we call it in RPM called build. It's the third build. It's the last.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And sometimes you change underlying dependencies. There's a lot of reasons. Sometimes you change metadata. No matter what it is, you want to be able to distinguish that from the first time you built it. And then like Helm has a similar thing where there's like in the Helm chart metadata, you can say, here's the version of the chart itself, and here's the version of the app that is managed by the chart. So a lot of other packaging formats support this. We don't. It leads to lots of problems, and we need to fix it. But I don't know that it makes sense to do it in isolation either.
Right. This is definitely something positive, sounds positive. But I think yeah, like it is currently, it is actually kind of there are many epics ahead of it, which sounds correct to me. The next one is a support bundle, direct bundle installation. I felt this probably was little of higher utility to our users. So maybe this should be little ahead of every others. I don't know.
Yeah, I would like this to be a thing. This has been a pet peeve of mine in OLM forever, basically. That right now you have to build and push a catalog to an image registry that has references to your bundle, which is a pretty big barrier, especially with our existing tooling. So this is basically saying, let's make OLM v1 support references directly to a bundle in the cluster extension API, in which case now people who want to test a bundle can literally just push the bundle image to the image registry and then reference it directly. I think this is, as I mentioned in that issue, I've got a POC for this that's implemented alongside a bunch of other POC stuff. It's not really hard at all to do it. The only little bit is that there are API changes. They're not drastic. We've already sort of put discriminated unions in our API in the right spot, right? So we have like a source.catalog where you can tell us how to query the catalog and we'll resolve a bundle. In my prototype, I was like, well, okay, let's have a source.bundle. And you just tell us a bundle image reference. And then when we call resolve, rather than trying to go talk to a catalog, we just literally say, oh yeah, here's the bundle you told us you wanted, done. So I think the abstractions that we have and the APIs that we have make it fairly straightforward to add this. We would just need to do a design and build consensus about doing it.
Just out of curiosity, I feel like we had that in Ruckpack already, right? But then we deprecated and got rid of Ruckpack. So now we're just saying that we'll have functionalities similar to that, but
Yep.
maybe not. But
It is, yeah. We essentially moved Ruckpack into operator controller and made it an implementation detail, and did not expose Ruckpack's ability to directly reference a bundle image, sort of on purpose, just because that was just more more features that we didn't really prioritize, and we didn't want to overextend ourselves. So this is basically saying, well, we want to make our cluster extension API allow for direct bundle references, and then plumbing through that reference to all the right places. I would put this, so from a prioritization standpoint, if you scroll such that that one's at the bottom of the list on it, or Lala. No, not to the bottom, just so that the direct bundle install is at the bottom, so we can see what's above it.
Oh, yeah. So we have,
I think so. I would say the kubectl operator one should be above the cluster extension parameters, and I think the support bundle installation should also be above the parameters. That one's maybe debatable though.
yeah. I mean, we can come back to this. So depending on how our next release goes, we can definitely come back and revisit and see if your priorities are aligned.
At this point, we're what, 5 or 6 epics down the list anyway. So
Right. Yeah.
Where's that put the kubectl operator in overall?
So kubectl operator, if I put in the bottom, on top we have,
I would almost move the kubectl operator up more.
Yeah, you were putting it on the bottom.
Not the bottom, but it's not at the very top either.
Yeah. Okay.
so right now we have support watch namespaces, webhook, permissions for bundle recycling, performance scale. Those are ahead of kubectl operator.
Okay, thanks for that rundown.
It's interesting to me, like we're doing some of the permission pre-flight check and the stuff to help with the UX around permissions. 1424 is another UX thing, right? Like right now today, if you want to install an operator on the command line, you pretty much have to go and manually hand jam some cluster extension YAML, or take one of our samples and change. I can make an argument that this is sort of on par with the permission stuff, because it's a pretty big improvement to the UX from a command line standpoint.
So you're talking about 1440, Joe?
1424.
1424. Okay. Yeah, I mean, a kubectl operator, I think I also think it's very important, because right now we do not have any tooling for the work which kubectl operator is going to do for upstream, like operator control and catalog D. So how does it even mean if you keep on adding features to operator control and catalog D, but there is no way. I mean, there are ways, but if you're not making it easier for people to consume that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and I have another argument, which I think is even more tangible. So we're going to do the permission validation pre-flight check. That is all runtime on cluster, put stuff in the API. Then pretty high on the list is, okay, now build a UX that makes it essentially easier to gloss over that and handle it sort of automatically.
Yeah.
You need a kubectl operator plugin in order to do that. So I would probably say that this epic is just above the permission UX stuff in the no status list.
I would agree.
which I think puts it probably at number 1 or 2.
Yeah, I think probably 2.
Yeah.
Should we assign it to you, Joe, or somebody else? Like, is it open for anybody to pick up?
Why don't we assign it to me, and I'll take a look at my proof of concept and see if I can clean it up a little bit, and I'll write up a brief that talks about it.
Cool. And then I'll set up a meeting for performance scale sooner, so we can move with these epics. And with that, we are almost reaching to our time. So I think this is good. Let me go back to, I cannot find it anymore. So stop here. Yeah, that's what we had for agenda today. Anybody have anything else in the last 2 minutes? Not, thanks everyone. Let me stop the recording.